Hello, everybody. Today, Bones and I are going to talk about how plants sexually reproduce. Okay, and they use something called Bones. Bones! What have you brought to class with us today? Flowers! Bones is full of flowers today because that's how plants sexually reproduce, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Flowers are not just for giving your loved ones on holidays, flowers are an important part on how plants reproduce. Ready to talk about it, Bones? Wonderful. All right, let's talk about flowers. Okay, flowers, like the lily that you see in front of you, okay, are the ways that plants sexually reproduce. That means there has to be an exchange of pollen and eggs have to be fertilized, and we're going to talk all about that and what the different parts of the flowers are. Okay, because sometimes we have boy flowers, sometimes we have girl flowers, and sometimes we have boy-girl flowers at the same time. It's crazy. So here we go. First, you have to know what a flower is made up of, okay? So the bottom of the flower, or the underside of the flower, as you can see here, has two main parts. This green part down on the bottom, this is called the sepal. That protects the flower bud. This is where we're going to find the eggs and ovules and the ovaries of the flower down in there, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The sepal's main job is just to protect it, give it a little extra cushioning because of the elements of the weather and everything like that, and different animals walking around outside. Then we have the colorful part of the flower, which everybody loves. That's what's known as the petal. Okay, now the petal's colors are important because it attracts birds and insects and other pollinators to come near it. Okay, because the pollinators are what's going to help bring the different pollen grains around so the plants and the flowers can reproduce. Okay, now a secondary function of the petal is it also protects the middle of the flower. Okay, where the eggs are located, that has to be a little extra cushioning down there to protect them. So the color of the petal is important. The more colors there are, the more insects and animals it will attract. Isn't that right, Bones? Pink, green, yellow. I love it. Bones always comes prepared. Now, all flowers have petals. Most have sepals. Okay. Now, there are female parts in the flower, as you can see here. Okay. This is what's known as a pistil. Okay. This long pistil here. This is the female part of the flower. There's usually just one in the middle of the flower. You can see it coming out right here. Now, the pistil is made up into three parts. You've got the top part, which is called the stigma. Okay, this is like a little sticky part where pollen grains can fall and stick on it. Then we've got something here called the style. Okay, the style is just a long tube that holds that stigma upright for pollen to be able to fall on it. And then down here, we have the ovary, which contains the ovules and the eggs and things like that, where fertilization actually takes place and seeds will begin to form. Okay, so the bottom is called the ovary that contains eggs. The middle is called the style, and this is called the stigma up here. Now, this is all part of the female reproductive organ called the pistil. Okay, I like to remember the stigma and the ovary with the style in the middle. The style because, face it, girls have more style than guys. All right, that's how you're going to remember it. That brings us to the boy parts of the flower, okay? Now, a way to remember what the boy parts of the flower are, first of all, the boy part of the flower is called the stamen, okay? The stamen. There's usually a bunch of stamen in the middle of a flower. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them here in this picture, okay? The overall structure is called the stamen. Again, male reproductive part of the flower. Now, how are you going to remember that? What's the trick? Well, the word men right here is in the word stamen. Okay, so you can remember that this is the boy part of the flower. The top part of the flower, here's an enlarged view of it right here. This is called the anther. The anther contains the pollen of the flower. Okay, this is what's known as flower sperm. That's what it is. Okay, this is going to be used to fertilize the female parts of the flower. All right. And you can see the little pollen grains here on top. It's the yellow stuff that gets sticky and makes everybody sneeze and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there's pollen all over the place, especially this time of year. So the male parts of the flower are called the stamen, and the stamen has the anther on top of it with pollen grains. Now, If a flower just has girl parts, it's called an imperfect flower. If it just has boy parts, it's called an imperfect flower. If it has both boy and girl parts at the same time, it's the perfect flower. Okay, so here's a picture of a perfect flower with all of its different parts. Okay, here's that long center part again that we called the pistil. And the pistil is the top part is called the stigma. This is very sticky for when pollen falls on it. We have the style, okay, which has a long tube in which the pollen goes down, and then pollen eventually fertilizes the eggs down here in the ovary, okay? You can see this is a very delicate part of the flower, which is why we have sepals going around it to add extra cushioning, and we have petals going around it to add extra cushioning. All perfect flowers also have stamen, okay? This is made up of the anther on top, which has the pollen on it, and the filament, which is the stalk that holds it up. So even if the wind blows, okay, these anthers can knock into the stigma, and the pollen can stick to the stigma, and then the pollen starts making its way down the style into the ovary in order to fertilize the flower, in order to get new flowers, okay? So once again, flowers are the reproductive part of the plant, okay? So, they contain both male and female parts, and the whole point is to get the pollen from the male parts of the flower, okay, to the pistil, okay, of the female part of the flower in order for reproduction to happen, okay? We'll talk more later. Hope you enjoyed, and thank you for bringing flowers today, Bones. Appreciate it. He's a good guy.